This from Evan. I was wondering... this is in relation to the film at number 6, which is Due Date.
Due Date, yeah.
Right. I was wondering if the movie is still in the top 10, what the good doctor's opinion was on one scene in Due Date, where Robert Downey Jr.'s character hits a child and then threatens him with more violence if he tells his parents about it. I thought this was a disgusting scene, especially as it was located in a comedy movie, and the laughter that it enlisted in my cinema to be further proof of our society's impending demise, says Evan, which, you know... Who knows about society's impending demise, but Due Date.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Actually, I didn't laugh at that, and I felt slightly uncomfortable that other people did. I don't want to get big po-faced about it, because it is, I mean, it's clearly not real. But no, I agree. I mean, I didn't find that funny at all, and I did think, you know, if you were going through the script, you'd go, yeah, let's not do that. It's just, it's a very, very misjudged moment. I agree.
Tron Legacies were one of the most talked about films, which comes out this week. Many people, many decades ago, will have seen Tron, the original. This is not a remake.
The original Tron is, 1982, isn't it? And so the story here is that in 1989, Jeff Bridges Flynn has disappeared off into the grid, or he's disappeared, and he's not come back. And his son is now 27. I'm just trying to do the math on adding everything up. His son is now 27. The company is in danger of not being run in the way that it used to be. And then, mysteriously, as if from nowhere, a voice from the past appears. Here's a clip.
Why are you here, Alan?
I was paged last night.
Oh, man, still rocking the pager. Good for you.
Yeah, your dad once told me I had to sleep with it. I still do. Page came from your dad's office at the arcade. So? That number's been disconnected for 20 years. Sam, 2 nights before he disappeared, he came to my house. I've cracked it, he kept saying. He was talking about genetic algorithms, quantum teleportation. He said he was about to change everything. Science, medicine, religion. He wouldn't have left that, Sam. He wouldn't have left you.
So, it is unsurprising that what Sam does is to go to the arcade and somehow manage to, push the right button that ends up taking him into the grid. And you remember when Tron first came out? Did you see Tron when it first came out?
As I told you an hour ago.
Okay. The thing, I mean, we all did do the thing about going...
It looked a bit childish. I seem to remember, I just thought...
Tron looked a bit childish.
Yeah, I thought, I can't be bothered with that.
Well...
Was it a grown-up film?
Yeah, there was... It suffered from the fact that it was attempting to tap its way into a sort of, a market that had already moved on to some extent. But it was the idea that, wow, look, it looks like a video game. Everyone's playing video games? Well, great. Because I remember when I was at school, we would...
Listening to Wizard.
No, a little bit later on, when I was in the sixth form, we would... leave school ground sometimes to go to the pub round the corner in Elstree, where they had, not to drink, but they had a Space Invaders machine. It was like, wow, Space Invaders. And they had a tabletop Space Invaders. It seemed incredibly futuristic. So you're sort of in that period when anything with sort of graphic line, and of course what they did was they superimposed people's faces onto and it was like, wow, people in a computer game, isn't that incredible? It was the most mind-boggling idea. Now, Tron Legacy I saw at the IMAX cinema in IMAX 3D. I like IMAX very much. I'm not a fan of 3D, as you know. And, of course, what happens at the very beginning when they go into the game, at the very beginning of the movie, in fact, there's the title sequence. You've got the IMAX, you put on the glasses, and everything's coming out and pointing at you. And, well, that's fairly immersive. But very quickly, your eyes adjust to the 3D and it becomes irrelevant. So seeing it in IMAX was a good thing. The 3D I can really live without, frankly. So what happens is he goes...
You must tell us more about that one.
Yeah, he goes into the game where he discovers that Jeff Bridges is basically split into 2 characters, one of which is the older and wiser father, who in many ways is kind of like playing the Jeff Bridges character from playing the dude, which I have to go back and revisit that movie again. I'm really sorry, I haven't seen The Big Lebowski. I kept promising I would. Another year has gone by and I haven't. The other one is a sort of young, electronically created version of him, Clue, who is the sort of the evil nemesis. Here's the weird thing. All this stuff is going on with... and then meanwhile, there's another character who's played by Michael Sheen, who is essentially playing David Bowie as Aladdin Sane. For some reason, I'm not entirely sure why, but he literally acts and performs and looks like David Bowie's Aladdin Sane, even right down to the sort of feather cut at the back with the, and all the stage movements. And that's fine. The film cost something like $200 million, shot... I think the deal is that they shot it for 60 days and then they post-produced it for 64 weeks. when it was first announced, they showed a trailer at some convention, and the trailer predated the film, and the idea was if they mocked together a trailer, they would see whether there was any interest in the movie. And of course they mocked together a trailer and they put it up, and suddenly people went, wow, yeah, God, Tron, fantastic, because everybody thought, isn't Tron old hat, does anybody care anymore, hasn't the Tron boat sailed already? Surely all the people who are old enough to remember Tron are old enough not to be interested in going to see Tron Legacy. Anyway, they said they played this trailer, there's massive interest. So in a way, the film itself was generated by fan interest. Also, that kind of gives you a clue as to what the problems with the film are, is that it's a film that was generated by a trailer, and although there is a certain nostalgic charm in it, it very, very quickly loses its way. It's amazing that for a film that has quite so much special effects going on, quite so much thrown at the screen, quite so much sort of... I mean, there is still a sort of nostalgic goodwill appeal about that idea of going into a computer game. You know, there is still something about, oh yeah, what would it be like? You get there and suddenly there are all these other characters and they're electronic and you've got to find... So that still kind of appeals to me in exactly the same way as it did back in 1982. You know, although I don't play computer games now, the idea of the video arcade game, going into a video game, it's like Last Starfighter and all those sort of things. You know, if those things were real, that's a charming idea. The problem is that very quickly the plot sort of runs out of steam, and I was surprised at sitting there watching it on an IMAX screen, in a 3D IMAX screen, with a great big volume. The screen couldn't be any better, the picture couldn't be any better resolved. I think it was one of the very first screenings of it, thinking, I'm actually quite bored. And why am I bored? Am I bored because the characters aren't very interesting? Am I bored because the plot's kind of a little bit... You've got to get to that, and you've got to get to that, and he's got to do the thing, and then he's got to set up the meeting with the other thing, and then he's got... And then you start concentrating on all the things that are wrong with them. And the thing which is most remarkably wrong with the film is that despite everything else that they can do with all these incredible graphics, they've managed to get Jeff Bridges, right? And they've done a young version of Jeff Bridges' face, and then he goes in, he has his face scanned, which of course actually happened, you know, in the original Tron. He has his face scanned, and then he acts in a, you know, one of those digital rooms, and then they get an animated version of young Jeff Bridges acting on screen. So it's like, okay, fine, the years just float away, and you're exactly what you used to be like as Jeff Bridges, except for the fact that they can do everything now, right? They can do exploding buildings, they can do flying planes, they can do dinosaurs, they can do velociraptors, they can do whales, they can do whatever he wants. But the thing they can't do is mouths. What is it with human mouths that all the time the Jeff Bridges thing is trying to talk about this? He looks like Cher in Burlesque. He looks like some for some reason I can't open his mouth. It's like the wide mouth frog joke. It's like you think he's running the whole film. Jeff Bridges is going to say, "Oh, you don't see many of them around, do you?" It's really, really peculiar. And I remember seeing the 3D version of Beowulf, which of course is all digital characters, all running around, you know, stripped to the waist and, you know, rippling torsos. But the one thing they can't do is their mouths, and it's a bizarrely distracting thing. And I started to wonder, am I obsessing about the fact that they can't do his mouth properly because the film isn't interesting enough to take my mind off that? Or am I wondering about it because it is something beyond which I cannot get in order to be engaged in the film? And I decided that it was the former. That when you're watching a movie that's that big, that's got that much special effects going on, that's got that much nostalgic, you know, that sort of wellspring of appeal to draw, and hey, look, we're bringing back Tron, everyone loves Tron, you know, it's Tron, it's great, it's Jeff Bridges, you know, coolest man alive, all these things are going on, and you are sitting there worrying about the fact that the young Jeff Bridges' mouth isn't moving properly. What does that tell you about the film? What it tells you about the film is that for all the stuff that they're throwing at it, for all the special effects, for all the, you know, the Daft Punk soundtrack, for all those things that they're trying to get right, the film is oddly dull. And I say oddly dull because it's not dull like Michael Bay's Transformers is dull because it's just smashing and thumping and crashing and bashing and meat-headed nonsense. It's oddly dull because I quite like the you know, the visual design of it. I like the idea of it. I like the kind of the neon lit quality of it. As I said, there's something oddly charming about it all, and yet the charm just starts to plod and drag, and I'm just sitting there worrying about electronic Jeff Bridges' lips, which is not good.